so I'm just going to solo all the drums. I just want you to listen to what I've got here. Because it sounds really nice, really nicely recorded. So I've not done anything to that at all. There's no plugins on them. I've just got the files up and turned a few things up and down just to, you know, give it some levels. But that's pretty raw. So I'm going to have a look here. If you listen to that with the drums there, you can really hear the room, and you get that delay that you get where the sound is getting. So you hit the snare and the sound is getting to the room mics at a later time than it would be getting to the snare mic, because the snare mic's closer. Now that's obvious, but you can really hear that across the overheads in the room here, and it gives it that kind of garagey feeling. But with a song like this, the music is so tight that I think that room is distracting for me. And if you really, really zoom in on this, so if we look at the first hit here, which is sort of the snare, and the bass drum sort of starts over there, they're meant to be at the same time, but we're talking like milliseconds here. We're you know, it's not, if I expand that so you can really see what's going on, you can see there that that's the first hit. But if we scroll down here to the overheads, the first hit comes later. And then the room, well, I've got to scroll over to get the first hit of the room, because it's significantly, you see, that's where the snare is, that's where the overheads are, and then that's where the room starts. So they're all quite delayed from each other, and that's going to cause all sorts of phasing problems. It's going to make it sound a bit trashy, which again, on some songs, I think is perfectly reasonable. If anything, I'd be pushing the rooms more the other way to kind of give them a lot wider and a lot trashier feel. But in this particular song, I don't feel that that's right for it. So I'm going to use a Waves plugin called InPhase. And I'm going to start purely just with the overheads. So if I go InPhase, I'm going to use InPhase Stereo. Now this is a great tool. So if I set the first channel there to channel 1 and 2, so basically I'm dealing with the stereo sound of the overheads, and then the B channel here is going to be a sidechain, and if I click up here and do activate sidechain, I can now send the snare drum. If I also solo the snare, I can send the snare drum to this plugin like that. So if I now play the beginning of the song and click on this little capture button here, you can now see it's captured a bit of that waveform. So if I go to here, let's say I'm going to look at this second hit here, we can see this bottom yellow wave here is the snare drum, is the close snare signal, and this top wave here is the overheads. So what I can do is I can bring back the overheads here to line up with the snare. So we can look and see where the snare starts. I'm going even further on this. So if I say the snare starts there, then I'll bring the overheads back to sort of match it like that. And then we can visually see, and I hate mixing with my eyes, but this isn't really mixing, this is more of a techie thing. We can visually see that that is now really bang in time. And if we listen to that, just the snare and the overheads, if I take that plugin off now, so now you hear the room because the room's further away, but if I bring it in, they're just instantly tight and together. So I'm going to repeat the same process on the room mics. So I'm going to go to that and do the same thing. Put the InPhase plug-in on it, drag it over to this monitor. I'm going to go to channel 1 and 2 and sidechain, turn the sidechain on, and again go back to the snare and put in the room sidechain and hit capture as well. So I've got that one there. Let's zoom in a bit. You can see the bottom one is the snare, which is in yellow, and the top one there is the room mics. So I'm going to bring them back while I'm zoomed out, just a bit like that, and then I'm going to expand the waves a bit and zoom right in to get the detail on that. So that's kind of where the snare starts, and I'll bring that back to there. Now what I'm seeing here is a phasing issue, because as the wave is going up in the rooms, it's coming down in the snare mic and vice versa. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap the phase with this button here of the room mics. Hang on, I'm trying to zoom that out. I don't want to have the room mics out of phase with the close mics and with the overheads, because otherwise things will cancel out. And that looks a bit more correct to me now. So again, I'm doing this by eye, but now let's have a listen to that snare and that room together. If I turn off that plugin, I'll bring it back. So you're still getting the room and the feel of the room, but it's not delayed. Now, I'm a massive lover of having room mics that are delayed to make things sound huge. So don't get me wrong, this is not something I would do on most mixes I'm doing. I'm kind of showing what you can do with the plugin and why it's one of my favourite plugins, because you can really fix issues with it. That's not to say that you should be doing this on every single drum sound. On this particular song, I really think it's going to help, because it will tighten everything up no end. If I now just play the unmixed drum mics, but play them all together with all the mics in, we can have a listen to the drum sound now, and then I'll pull out those plugins, and you can have a listen to the difference and how tight they are. So now I'm going to pull them out the room. So that's what we had before. Now I'll put them back in. Now I can push the room a little bit more if I wanted to. And then what I could do is I could split the difference. I would say, well, actually, I do want the rooms a little bit further away to give some room, and I could just move them back. But if we start from a 0 point, then you're completely in control. So that's if I split the difference on the room and allow a little bit of room movement. .59, call it 8.6, that'll be 4.3, which is what I came to. Yeah, so I like that. So what I've just done there is I've just adjusted the movement of the overheads in the room, and I've split the difference, so they're not perfectly aligned with the snare drum, but they're halfway between being perfectly aligned and what they were, just to still get a little bit of feeling of room to the kit. But I can adjust that at any point. That's the great thing with that plugin, is I can adjust that at any point. If I feel that the mix is getting messy once the other instrument's in, it's losing some tightness, I can bring them back in. And if I feel that it's all sounding a little bit sterile and too tight, I can move out the rooms a bit more and maybe give it a bit more ambience off that way. And I've not even touched a reverb yet. You know, this is reverbless at the moment.